Give me your name, the name of your entry, and where you're talking to us from.
Okay. My name's Keith Weber. The name of the entry is Intentional, and I'm talking to you from Windsor, Colorado.
Your opening two chapters were knockout. I mean, totally. The first one was like, okay, this is weird. There's something in that barrel. I figured out what it was. I didn't figure out what they did with it. So that was really cool to find out later. And then also the second chapter is both heartwarming and everything. And then in an action adventure novel, you break our heart. Did you think of that on purpose, or did that just happen as you were writing? Because you're just so darn good.
Well, no, I appreciate that. The reality is that Intentional is actually the second book in the Sean Webb series. And during the first book, I had to create a backstory for my character, Sean Webb. And while I was writing the first book, this second book, Intentional, really came, the ideas really melded very well, very easily, actually, as it came together. So I knew long before I ever wrote the first sentence exactly what was going to happen and how this was going to play out. Sure.
How far did you go into the second book in your mind or on your outlines or whatever you do before you said, okay, that's another book, I'm stopping that? And
I knew right away it was a second book. I knew right away it was a second book.
Excellent. Yeah.
I didn't have to get far at all because they're very different. I mean, obviously same character and a lot of the same, I don't want to say themes, but both being in that thriller, action, adventure genre. I knew what they were going to be. And I just knew right away that this was a second book.
Right. Let me ask you this. Why did you decide, you said you were writing you were writing nonfiction. What type of nonfiction did you write?
Well, my first job out of college, way too many years ago, was as a copywriter for an advertising agency. So I've done everything from writing advertising copy to writing magazine articles. I was a freelance magazine article writer for a while. A lot of it was in trade publications. I actually worked in the financial services industry for many, many years. One of my last roles in that industry was as the chief marketing officer for a small broker dealer. And in that role, I not only got to review lots of copy, whether it be advertising copy or educational related content, that kind of stuff I got to review. But of course, I ended up writing a bunch of it myself as well. So I've been writing for years and years and years.
Was there anything you learned either in school or as you were writing your technical type of things and your copywriting, that those skills you said, hey, I can bring that into creative writing?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was the conversational tone. And again, I've always been a reader of this kind of book. And so as I would write even the whether it be advertising copy or website copy or whatever it would be, a lot of times it was educational related material. I would try to make it very conversational. And so to me, having the tone of the manuscript be very conversational was important to me. It just seems to me like that's where more people can grab onto it.
Right. Excellent. I think that you did a fantastic job. I don't think there was a point in your story where I said, I'm lost. Not a single point. And, no matter how good you are, you could lose a reader by being boring. You can lose a reader by just not constructing things correctly. What is your style of production then? Like, are you an outliner, or are you seat of your pants? Or do you rewrite? What do you do? Like, how do you get to such clarity in your writing?
That's a really interesting question because I'm trying to figure that out for myself. Again, I'll go back to the first book in the series. The first book, the idea for it had sat in the back of my mind probably for 4 or 5 years. And I finally had some time and I thought, I'm going to sit down and try this. And so that one was very much pantser. It just flowed. But after 4 or 5 years of thinking about it, I kind of expect that it should, right?
Yeah.
And then, like I say, for this book, Intentional, it became very clear as I was writing the first one that this would be such a great follow-up to the first book, that that one took a little more effort and a little more planning, but I would still say it was largely a pantser production. But now I get to the third one, and I will tell you, I am plodding along on the third one like you wouldn't believe. So I'm a little bit of both.
When do you have time to write?
Well, I'm retired, so that's the first thing, and that certainly does help. So I typically find that I'm most creative in the mornings, and I try to write in the mornings. And I'll probably 4 or 5 hours, probably 4 or 5 hours. As you probably know, Peter, it is not difficult to lose yourself after 5 hours. Just look up and go, where did the morning go?
Yeah. Normally I get what I call frozen butt syndrome from sitting in the chair. That usually gets me up after about 4 hours.
Yes, no, I completely get it. I completely get it. So yeah, I typically try to find time in the mornings.
Yeah. What about the choice of your subject? I mean, it's interesting. You mix, there's an ex-military type of thing. You mix the fact that Sean is not only ex-military, but he really likes motorcycles. So I assume there's one in your garage.
There is.
Okay.
There is.
Which one is it?
It's a Harley Davidson Sportster 1200.
Okay, that's what I thought. Sean, he's a complicated guy. He's going through a whole lot. Now he's got to deal with this plot, but he's a nice guy. How did you come up with a guy who's been through so much crap, and now he's like, hey, he's still a really nice guy. He takes things slow. He doesn't take advantage of people. There's all that.
Yeah. I think the first rule, and I didn't even know it was a rule when I started writing, but I do think that you want your protagonist to be likable. And so that's, that was my first thing, is that I wanted him to be likable. I also wanted him to be almost everyman, right? I wanted him to be very relatable to the reader. Again, I mentioned Lee Child as one of my favorite authors, and Jack Reacher, of course. I mean, but Jack Reacher is not every man. Right? I mean, he's this huge guy. So he's larger than life, physically, metaphorically. I mean, all of those things. And I wanted to go a little bit opposite of that, quite honestly. When I started thinking about, and I've had people ask me, well, who is the Sean Webb character most like or based off of? And I would say that he's probably most like, I'm thinking John McClane from the Die Hard series.
Yeah.
Just kind of an everyday guy who gets thrown into situations. Thankfully, he's got the training, i.e. through his military background. I also wanted to show him as an educated man. So that's why, we talk about him going to USC, getting his degree in computer science, specifically computer security, because I do think that, in the future, I think that aspect of the character will actually come out in future books.
What made you decide to enter the Adventure Writers competition? Here you are writing technical manuals and magazine articles about facts and figures and finance, and you go, okay, I'm going to write this fiction novel, and then I'm going to enter the Adventure Writers competition. Yeah,
a critique partner actually suggested it. A critique partner suggested it, and truthfully, I mean, I entered it. Let's face it, all beginning new writers have a huge amount of self-doubt. I can't imagine anyone who doesn't. That's not in my mindset. And so, quite honestly, I thought this would be a great barometer to see, I think it's good. Let's find out.
Yeah. Well, guess what? It's good.
Well, thank you.
The name of the book is Intentional. Everyone should intentionally read this book.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.